So when we look at cloud computing, we can consider a couple of different dimensions. Who owns old equipment? Who operates old equipment? Who's getting access to the actual service? Now, those three criteria can help us understand, is it private or is it public? In a private environment, I'm the one who owns it. I'm the one who operates it. I defined a service access, and that's really going to be defined within my organization. When we go into the public environment, somebody else owns it. Somebody else is operating it. And importantly, the access levels are going to be much broader across different organizations. So we can look at private and public in that different dichotomy.
Public cloud computing is what most people are familiar with. It's available anywhere in the world. It's a service that's accessible through any kind of network. It's not siphoned off to a particular branch of user. So examples would be Google search or Salesforce.com, where any enterprise in the world can go in and use the Salesforce cloud as a pay-as-you-go basis. Private cloud, different proposition. It's refined or confined to a particular group of users, more often than not to people within one enterprise. So, a large bank can say, well, I'm interested in cloud computing. There's some things we might be able to do in the public cloud, but you know what? There's an awful lot of stuff that I'm not comfortable having run in somebody else's cloud. I want it running myself, but I still want to deliver that service internally with the same characteristics as cloud. And then you might have something called a community cloud, which is where you get a group of enterprises together to share a cloud. The most common example of that would be something they call the government cloud or the G cloud, where different arms of the government are sharing one cloud amongst themselves. And then finally you have hybrid cloud, which is simply a solution, a deliverable that actually uses services from a blend of different private, community and public clouds.
What public cloud does better than private cloud is economy of scale. The reality is an individual organization is never going to be able to build out the type of capability that we see in a global class data center coming from the likes of a Microsoft or a Google. It doesn't necessarily do as good a job when it comes to very specific, specialized requirements that an industry or a specific organization within a particular country might require.
There's a lot of confusion about this thing called private cloud. Public cloud companies claim there is no such thing as a private cloud, but then they would, wouldn't they? Right? So I don't think they realize how big some of these larger enterprises are. I'm aware of private clouds that are a lot larger in scale than some public clouds because of the size of the organization and the complexity it deals with. There's also, though, some confusion because I've gone to conferences and people say, well, we'd like to have a private cloud, but the whole idea of cloud is I don't have to go out and spend a lot of money. But in order to build a private cloud, I have to go out and spend a lot of money. And say, well, no, you don't. There are companies now that offer private cloud as a service.
Where organizations, for example, have a specific set of data which has to be in country, this is the data sovereignty issue, that is a service level, a specialization that the public cloud providers may not currently be able to provide. That's where it makes sense to do private infrastructure as a service.
This term of private cloud is also confused because people say, well, you don't really get the economies of scale with a private cloud. The people that say that I don't think understand the size of some larger enterprises around the world. You look at some of the customers that we deal with, global Fortune 500 companies, the size of the investment they have in infrastructure and technology is huge. It's in the order of billions of dollars investment. You look at government organizations in the States, you look at an organization like NASA, has an immense private cloud, much bigger than most organizations' public clouds would be.
What is important for organizations to understand is it is not private or public. The reality for most organizations is it's going to be private and public. They're going to have to deal with both of them at the same time.
The hybrid cloud model is really trying to take the best of both worlds. The public cloud has the benefits of being simple and on demand, but it can be very expensive if you're a very large organization. Whereas the hybrid model says we're going to use that external cloud just when costs make sense to do so. The rest of the time we're going to use our own private cloud infrastructure because that's going to be more economical, but maybe a bit more complex to manage.
People are using infrastructure as a service in Australia today. It's not perhaps as widespread as you might expect. It's not taken off as fast as people perhaps thought it would. It's very much relegated to those people who need to use some resources for a period of time, not for a long period of time, just a shorter period of time. Maybe they've got a very volatile business environment, or they want like a sandpit to play in for a while. Then infrastructure service makes perfect sense. I think more widespread adoption of infrastructure service will probably happen over the next 12 months. As people get more familiar, a lot of people dipping their toes in the water at the moment, they're getting comfortable. And I think they're also just beginning to appreciate all the local providers of infrastructure as a service.
If you are a very large organisation, the chances are you're not going to see real deep cost savings from moving out to a public cloud. You're going to see some very interesting business advantages by maybe moving out to the cloud or possibly building an internal cloud yourself. Whereas a smaller organisation, it's a no-brainer. They're going to save a lot of money by moving out to a public service.
What Gartner is seeing from our interaction with clients is that the majority of the investment is currently in private cloud computing. But we believe that by 2012, that's going to shift. The majority of the investment is actually going to be going into public.
The idea that your data must be located in the country where you are in residence is absolutely false.
They don't necessarily get the same economy of scale if they try to put a data center in every single country.
We run a lot of operations here in Australia for companies around the world, and their data is actually coming into Australia.
Those situations, we're seeing savings of anywhere between 7 and 15%.
Other organisations I've seen use it as a kind of a spare capacity when they reach peak loads.
The first thing you need to realise is that it shouldn't be about just saving money.